into philosophy, and you just switched into here.
Okay.
Um,
No,
I'm really sorry for the delay.
it's
There
okay.
was some work that needs to be done.
I hope it was communist
Um,
related at least.
no. It was schoolwork.
Okay.
I
So
I
can
I
you
really
let me say this. It's been a long week for me. I was very busy. I haven't prepped anything necessarily.
yeah. I'm
So
not
why don't
prepared
you
at all.
start us off with something?
Okay. The first thing I really want to do in communist debates is to set on common ground. Um, and that common ground would in the best case be that we can agree on the destructive effect of capitalism on society and the planet, and there's work that needs to be done to make that efficient and better.
Okay, so I'll do this. I don't I don't normally like to just be in a position where I'm defending a side. You will need to defend your side at some point, but I will agree to defend two or three specific points that you're raising right now. You'll have to link it to capitalism by describing how this problem is connected to capitalism, by defining
Okay,
capitalism and how and the connection to it. And then I can talk about those, and then at some point you will have to defend communism.
yeah, sure. Um, so um, one inherent attribute of capitalism is that it's
Wait, but
reliant on,
start by defining it, and then what its inherent attributes are.
well, capitalism is the economic system that most countries are going by, which is that, well, there's those aspects of a free economy of oh, it's cold. I'm literally shaking in my own fucking room. It's insane. That the system reliant on what's it called again? Fuck, it's already late. On I'm actually not getting the right way. Oh.
We need to, I guess, have a definition. It's
On
important.
competition. Jesus Christ, that took long. On competition, it's hard to define that because um
So okay, so define it slightly more broadly.
um,
What do you mean? Competition in markets, free markets, what?
free markets generally, where you're basically free in what you're doing economically,
Okay,
where you could
so
define your own actions without any control,
okay, so I don't know
with need of capital, of course.
I don't know where we have entirely free markets on the planet right now.
Well, that's the goal of every.
Right, okay.
I can only speak out of the view of German parties, um, and they're striving for a system where you're more free in your decisions on the market.
Sure,
Right now, it's
I
regulated
accept
by some at some point.
I accept that there's like an aim where capitalism is the freest, and there's a something on the other side where it's the other where it's like the least free. Um, but what I'm saying is that we don't have a situation right now where everything is set up to maximum capitalism. And because of that, we are in sort of mixed economy, and that would make it difficult for you to say this problem is connected to capitalism because we're not necessarily in a fully capitalist system. We are in a mixed system. You are not free to do everything you want. There are regulations, there are taxes,
Yeah, that's
there are a lot
yeah,
of
yeah, of
things.
course. But what I meant is that on the ground basis, there's private ownership of things, of productions, and
Yeah,
there's
sometimes, yeah.
common ownership, which is opposing itself. And this is all controlled by the market, which is what I meant by capitalism. And the market regulates itself by some point and gets regulated by governments at some other point.
Okay, what about
And this
things like
regulation,
public schools? Is that within capitalism?
that's all dependent on the government. Of course, public schools are governmental organizations which are not reliant on making a profit to exist, which are funded.
Okay, so the profit is an element you're raising here as part of capitalism.
It's yeah, of course.
Okay. So, sorry,
Companies
public
need,
schools is outside of capitalism, and countries that have public schools are already in
no,
a.
they need to be funded. If someone needs to create that money and put it into the system of public schools to make them work. Everything is based on money to work.
So
And this idea is just corrupt.
let me just specify here. So when you say money, there's two options. You either have like money, or you have a centrally planned economy, because money basically allows people to make decisions locally. Money being like a sort of indicator as to what the value of something, or how difficult it is to make, or the scarcity of something, and then that's what money is a signal for. I'm not exactly explaining it super well, but just like as a concept. And if you don't have money, to not have money, you need to have a centrally planned economy. So you're saying we need to get rid of money and then
Planned
shift over to.
economy still works with money, how we define it, how money works nowadays.
I appreciate that. I'm saying the reason why there's money is because in order to replace money, you need to have a centrally planned economy. When you don't have a centrally planned economy and you have money, then people make decisions locally using money or the price of stuff as an indicator of value, scarcity, etc. So if you want to take
The
that
idea
away,
of finding a common value between different things is a good idea, but binding this binding this, including food and the need of money to get food, is what I find corrupt in the system. That you are so dependent on this money, which is not given to you, which you need to earn, which you are forced to earn. Because if you're not able to earn that money, you will just not be able to sustain yourself within the system. And we can see that this is not distributed well, that this is not given in a fair amount, that people are just not able to work to to sustain.
okay, is this an
it's
issue?
just getting worse.
Is this an issue you want to discuss, or is it just something you're trying to define
This is the
capitalism?
issue, that the accumulation of capital is one significant attribute of the system, which makes it so self-destructive.
Sorry, so can you explain to me what you mean accumulation of capital? What you went from money?
I really don't know if the term is the same, but in German there's a term, the accumulation of capital, which means that in capitalism, capital is rather has the attribute that it rather centralizes itself to grow rather than distribute itself to have a meaning. That
Okay, great.
money is rather invested and stored.
Great. So we've had money for, I don't know, 2,000 years. No, 10,000 years, sorry, 20,000 years. We've had capitalism, let's say 200 years to 50 years. And
170 years about.
Sorry?
170 years.
Okay, 100. So again, we haven't had full capitalism, but we have like elements of capitalism for 170 years, sure. Why haven't we seen a situation where there's only two people holding all the capital in the world? If you say it only grows over time, why aren't we in a situation where there's just two people on the planet that hold all the capital?
Because when it started, there was not as much capital and there weren't as much people holding that capital, but we can see on the numbers that it's just that
when
in
when we
2021
started,
there's
if you recall, we had like a very minimal number of rich people, and 99% of the planet was poor. Are we in agreement, or is that?
but rich people only get but rich people only get richer, which is the goal of capitalism,
Right? So I'm
to
saying
make
if
more
that
profit.
just from a mathematical point of view, right? If capital keeps growing and keeps accumulating, why don't we have a situation where two people control all the capital on the planet?
Because there's also more capital which needs to be distributed to be earned.
Where is this capital coming
You can
from?
just print money as much as you want.
So governments printing money is why we don't have two people just owning all the capital. Like the government creates money
So
from thin air or capital from thin air and distributes it.
yeah, of course.
And otherwise, we
But
would just have two people
the
controlling
point
everything.
is, but no, that's not the point. Is that if that there's always the need to grow in capitalism, to infinitely grow, but there's not infinite amount of space to grow, which is why
But
there's
what does grow mean?
well
Growing what?
to well for a country the need to grow means to increase their GDP. For a company, the need to grow means to make more money, to increase the amount of money that they make per year, per month, whatever.
Right, but when
Because
okay,
only
so
this way you can sustain on the market.
right, so
Because
one
competition
second.
makes money, so you need to make more money.
I think I'd just like to go a bit more deeper than making money. The gross domestic product is you make stuff. Yeah, forget the money for a second. You make stuff. And the idea is
But it's measured in money, in fiat currencies.
sure, but it's again product. You're making something. It's measured by money. I accept that. But the idea is that you're becoming more or the reason why you want to grow is you're becoming more productive. Now, you can become more productive. Are you familiar with Wealth of
But you
Nations
can't
by
infinitely become.
one second? Are you familiar with Wealth of Nations by
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith?
I didn't read it because it's
Are you familiar
fucking huge,
with the
and
pin
I don't have
factory
the time.
example?
No,
Okay, so in the book Wealth of
I don't have the time to study economics. I'm a high school student.
sure. If you so just an example from the book. There's a pin factory in Adam Smith Wealth of Nations, and the pin factory decides to like makes, I don't know, 10 pins per day. It's like actual like metallic pins used for clothes and stuff like that. And it decides to go with like a sort of management reshuffle where where you sorry, one second, I need to take a sip of water.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, sorry. So before in the pin factory, every person was like an artisan making one pin at a time. And then Adam Smith comes and says, here's an idea. You give each person like not to make an entire pin from start to finish, but they just do like one part of the process. So you break the process down into 10 parts. And then one person does one specific role and another one does another specific role, and there's a sort of division of labor and specialization. And the result of this breaking stuff down into parts and people specializing in doing particular jobs results in that pin factory, at least in the book, becoming 10 times more productive. So now they're making 10 times more pins because they had an idea about how to become more productive.
But there's been specialization before. The people making those pin parts are not specializing in making those exact pin parts, because then their job would be in such a great niche that it would be not
Right, I'm
not
just
intelligent to.
well, but it's kind of like a
Yeah,
factory line where every person does something very specific, but because everyone's working together and everyone's doing you break down the product you divide the product down into parts, and then everyone specializes on their parts. That's how you have more productivity. I can give you a different example if you'd like. If it will make more sense.
I just don't see where this
Sure.
connects to what we've
Sure.
spoken about.
Let's say we have two farmers, yeah, and one is actually this is an example I think Karl Marx even made in his book. You have one farmer producing corn or cobs of corn, and another one producing red wine. And let's, for argument's sake, say that one farmer is really good for producing corn, and the corn that they produce is a lot, but they're very bad at producing red wine. But they still want to have red wine, so they still allocate some of their field for grapes, so they can have red wine. And similarly, the other farmer isn't very good with corn, but they're really good with red wine, but they still want to produce some corn because they want to eat the corn. And the idea is this: so one specializes in corn, but is sorry, one specializes in corn and one specializes in red wine. And if you have the element of trade, where the person making the corn said, I'm very good at making corn. I'll sell you my corn if you sell me some of your wine. And the other person says, great. And then they deallocate. So the first person with the corn, they deallocate part of the field for grapes. So they're not going to grow any grapes there anymore at all. And they're just going to go fully 100% corn, and everything they need, they just buy through trade. Similar to the red wine person, they stop making corn. They're not good at it anyway. The amount of corn they make is very inefficient. And now they're more productive because they're focusing on what they're good at, and anything else that they need, they'll just buy with money. So when you have that transition when you have that transition to improve productivity, that is the growth in the economy that we're talking about.
Yeah. And what point are you making?
That is, I'm just explaining what growth is.
I know what growth is.
So we've increased the productivity, and now we have more growth than we had before. But that productivity can be increased through a better idea, better management of a system, a better machine that makes more widgets, a variety of
Yeah,
different
but
ways.
so we've gotten more productive, but
Okay.
the amount that we can sell is going to stagnate at some point. Are they still growing then?
If we become more productive, don't we sell more?
Not necessarily, because the space that they're productive on is limited.
The
So there's only some amount of corn that they can maximum that they can sell. There's the maximum amount of corn that they can sell.
I don't think there is.
But they need to
I don't
increase
think
productivity.
I would disagree. I don't think we know what the maximum is. We keep coming up with more and more ideas to um improve productivity. So we can
Yeah,
say
but there's
we can say, for example, that we
but ecologically there's a maximum amount of nutrients of
right.
like
So
the soil that they
let
grow
me
in
give an example. Right.
and the
So
field.
sure. Let me give an example. So firstly, we say we're not making any grapes on our plot of land. We're only making corn. We've increased productivity. Then we say we're only growing one type of corn or two types of corn, which are the best growers. And not only that, we're gonna try to, you know how farmers like pick the best crops to go for the seeds for next time. We're gonna iterate over that to make sure that the corn we use grows the fastest, sucks up the nutrients the fastest, is doesn't get affected by insects as much, so you can have more surviving corn. And then we say we're gonna put that's one iteration. That's the second iteration. The third iteration could be we're gonna put nutrients in the ground ourselves, which are gonna supercharge the growth of corn. That's another iteration, and we keep doing this over and over and over again. That we just produce like a lot of corn right now, and instead of like 90% of the population being allocated in agriculture, we now have a situation where only like a tiny percent, like 1 or 3% of the population
Yeah,
works in and everyone else works in services.
And that's a good that conveys to the question that I posed in the beginning, because right now we're at the point where we did this so often that the planet just doesn't it can't handle it anymore.
Why do you
That
say
we
that
have
though? Because technically, like the line keeps going up. Like we'll keep keeping more and more
which line?
food production.
Yeah, but it's not. You mean in your example or on the world right now? Because on the world right now, there's only about 60 harvests left until the planet just doesn't yield any more harvests.
I have no idea where you got that at all. No idea what you're talking about. What does it mean 60 harvests left?
Well, there's this thing called climate change, and
No, sorry, wait, was okay.
because of
Where did you get we only have 60 harvests left? I don't understand that at all. Where is this number from?
our golden data, for example, I've written an article about it.
I don't believe that to be true. 60 harvests left? I've never heard of this before.
There's the link.
Sorry?
I just sent you the link to it.
Okay, hold on. I don't see a link. Oh, personally? Okay, hold on.
Yeah, the direct message.
These claims are overblown, but soil erosion is a problem. Okay?
Yeah, I don't say that there's specifically 30 years of harvest left, but I do say that soil erosion is a problem which is expanding on a further pace than we can um um
Yeah, but
expand
the thing I'm
our
confused about is
productivity.
the thing I'm confused about is we have synthetic fertilizer which feeds about double the the amount of people we could have fed without it. Um, so could we not have something that that fixes soil erosion?
Yeah, we could, but the problem is that it will become more expensive the more we need it, and we will need it because naturally there's gonna be a point where there are gonna be no more natural harvests, and then there's
I
gonna be
look,
the question how many people can afford that.
I'm gonna have to say that this is wildly nonsensical. I can appreciate the concern, but going from a concern to full-blown catastrophe is something that I'm not willing to accept.
Well, the full-blown catastrophe is the impact that climate change has on the planet.
Okay, well you can okay, so let's see now. So you, how is capitalism affecting climate change specifically or tied to climate change?
Have you ever looked at the graphs of CO2 pollution and put it in histological relation to the start of capitalism, which we put at 170 years? If you look at the graph of our CO2 emissions and look at when it started to go nuts,
Right, so basically
when did that start?
the CO2 stuff starts at the year 1880, and usually we predict to like 2100, and we're saying that we have CO2 and that the Earth has increased in average Celsius by from the point of 1880 to today.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's up? What are we discussing?
We're discussing the impact of climate change on the world, aren't we?
Okay, but you need to tell me how is capitalism affecting that?
Well, climate change started to be a thing when capitalism started to be a thing.
Well,
It's
capitalism.
not monocausal, that's
Hold
obviously
on,
true.
hold on. The idea of starting at 1880 was because that's when the industrial era started. Are you saying that?
Yeah, and with the
I,
industrial era, there started to be factories, and with factories, there started to be capitalism
okay, great.
in its early stages.
So are you saying other economic systems would not use factories? Would
And
not
no,
use
but I'm
industry?
saying that other economic systems would regulate the usage of those factories
Why would they do that?
because they are aware that the overusage of those factories would result in the planet or in too high CO2 emissions, which would result in the greenhouse effect.
So what? We have an example right now from China that is aware that it's happening, but it's still deciding to do that because they want to do
And
that.
no, China's. Have you looked at the energy production of China? They're like 60% on green energy, and they're going to be carbon neutral by
They're still
2030 to
adding
40.
the China and India are still adding like 10 new coal mines a week. So they're investing in all types of energy, including renewables, including nuclear, and including coal. And like if you look like at China CO2 emissions versus the world, China's like shot up. Like the line is like a like it basically just shot up, and the rest of the world like went up and then went down and kind of like in the middle. But the point I'm trying to make is you're saying which economic system is willing to agree to be poor, and I don't think some countries specifically under a particular economic system will agree to be poor, like Europe, but other countries who are developing and need the energy to feed their people and to take care of the people, and bear in mind there's still about 3,000, sorry, not 3,000, 3 billion people that have very, very low access to energy. 1 billion have no access of those have no access to energy at all, and they need to get that because otherwise they live very poor lives. So who would agree to live very poor lives so that we don't industrialize or in fact deindustrialize what you're asking? I don't think that other economic systems would agree to do that. And in fact,
The industrialization that we're doing right now results in 7 million people dying to hunger every year, dying to starvation.
I don't.
Because
Your joy. I don't.
we're producing food
Yeah.
enough for 10 billion people, but we just throw it away because it's cheaper.
I don't know. So
And that's inherently to the
hold
system
on.
that
Can we not discuss that right now because it's you're just throwing an unrelated point to climate change, which we're discussing right now. And I'm going to make a point that when the USSR was around, the USSR was a heavy polluter. It was very interested in industry and industrialization and factories. It was very
yeah,
inefficient.
because they were being forced to do so because of
I
the
don't
USA.
agree.
The Cold War forced them.
Hold on, I don't agree. And not only that, they were very inefficient at the processes. So, for example, I will make the claim.
Because of sanctions.
I will make the claim that to produce one tractor in the 1940s in the USSR, you needed 16 times more material than an American tractor or the factories that produce in America, because at least in capitalism, you have the incentive to reduce, to eliminate waste. Waste being things that you can't earn money on, and if something is a waste, you'll try to optimize and remove that waste so it's not there. With a centralized economy, you don't have those incentives, and Russia and the USSR, sorry, had outright ecocide. There are books written about this. The Aral Sea is almost fully depleted. You had fatbergs on rivers. People will say don't throw live matches over the boat in a river or the whole river will catch on fire. in Poland when the USSR was there, the air was so thick with the smog that doctors had to have their offices underground. So we've already seen in communism,
That wasn't communism.
Marxist-Leninism, that um, these sorts of places do care about industry. They don't care about the environment, and you'll always have a situation where some countries are poor and they need energy and industrialization, and environment is a distant third, fourth, fifth. Only rich countries
And
care about the environment because they're already rich.
but what do you think is the reason for that poverty?
That they haven't improved their productivity yet. They don't have the
How can you improve
infrastructure.
productivity when your land just doesn't give you any options to do so, when you don't have any fertile land, when you don't have anything to grow crops on?
Sorry, I don't understand. You're asking, but we're talking about industry here, not agriculture.
But before industry comes agriculture, and if you don't have agriculture, you don't have the needs, the goods to become industrious in the first place.
So you're saying there are countries in the world that are still poor because it's difficult to grow stuff. Is that what you're saying?
There's the continent called Africa, yeah.
Okay. Can we agree though that if you that we have a variety, especially in modern times, we have a variety of growing stuff practically anywhere. Or you can say we have the ability on growing more and more food on less and less land. Like let's say
Yeah,
there's
we
a
do have the ability to be insanely efficient and to be insanely good at what we're doing,
okay, that's good, right?
but only if we can afford it and if we can fund it. Yeah, but it's not bound to capitalism.
So I'm confused as to what point are you trying to make that I need to reply to?
The point is that you've spoken about um, nations that are not as innovative and as productive as we are. And
But
the reason for that is because they
well,
inherently can't, because their land
hold,
doesn't yield the resources for
they
them
don't
to be.
specifically with innovate. Okay, why can't they use the innovation and the ideas from other countries that are freely available for them to use right now? They don't. It's not. It's
How
not.
do
It's
you
not.
think Africa is gonna use the innovative
No,
ideas
no,
of,
no,
of the
don't ask
USH?
me. Don't ask me a question that requires me to. First, don't answer a question with a question, and don't ask me to imagine something. I'm saying that we've got decades of evolution of ideas in the agricultural sector that are freely available. There's no price on them. Like you can open the internet, and people in Africa have internet. You can open the internet and see to grow more eggs, we can use these things. Or you can say down the line when they save a bit of money, say to grow more X, if we buy this, we'll grow 10x more after we use this X. We use this product, sorry. So
Those
you you
products will
you can
neither be
start
supplied.
you can start that process now without too many issues. Like at least ideas are free.
Ideas are free, but their implementation is not free.
So are you saying Africa is poor because of capitalism?
I'm saying that on their own they can't achieve much, which is why they're reliant on external funding, which is not properly
I
given to
think
them.
okay, I think that the issue with Africa is more to do with governments, with rule of law and with property rights, or corrupt governments, rule of law and property rights, and very, very high regulations than anything than
No,
anything.
we've already seen.
Those are the main issues that I would say are plaguing the obviously they have, like it's around the equator and some places may not be as good to grow things as others, but Africa is a very, very large continent. And there are areas there where you can grow stuff and areas there that have mineral-rich environments. So the only thing hampering Africa is the corrupt governments that they have at the moment.
yeah, and there's people like the
But
revolutionaries
I
of
don't understand what that
Burkina
has to do with.
Faso, for example.
But before we go to, we were just talking about climate change. Don't you want to keep talking about that?
Well, you moved the point to poverty in countries, and
Okay, so I
uh,
retract that point. Do you want to stick with pollution? Because I gave you an example where the USSR is polluting more than any other capitalist country by a lot.
yeah, and I can tell you the reason for that, and the reason for that is not because capitalism is more efficient. The reason for that is that capitalism sanctioned them, which is why they needed to be that
Okay,
to be like that.
I don't accept that reason.
Because state
I don't
because the
accept it.
UdSSR was forced to become state capitalism to sustain their people.
Okay, so I don't accept that. I don't accept state capitalism. USSR was an attempt at socialism, and I'm giving you an example. And even if I take, even if I say that the USSR was like a centrally planned economy to some degree or to a high degree, if I look at any other country, including America, where if I take the government or an agency in the government doing something, well, they're not regulated, well, they don't have the profit motive, and they don't regulate themselves, and the sort of utilitarian interest where they say, we know this pollutes, but we still want it for society, then it's always the case that these sorts of government agencies will pollute way more than anything in capitalism. For example, the US military pollutes more than 140 other countries combined. Now they're not regulated, or at least it doesn't seem like they are. They're not profit motivated, because their aims are not like to produce a profit.
No,
So
but their aims are to
I've given two examples.
to
The USSR,
protect the ones who are responsible for producing that profit,
yeah, but I've given two examples.
and to sanction those who would.
I've given two examples. The ecocide in the USSR, which is related to the economic system you're hoping to achieve,
No,
and anything that's outside of capitalism, i.e., the government.
the government is not outside of capitalism. The government in some way regulates capitalism, which
Right, but
includes it.
I'm saying it's not. We can agree that the army is not necessarily part of capitalism.
But it protects capitalism,
Sure, I'll agree. I have
and
no
it
problem.
oppresses those who try to escape from it.
It
For
does what? Sorry.
example, Cuba or Venezuela, it oppresses those who try to
No,
escape
look,
from it.
let's stick on the sane talking points for a second before we jump off to all these, you know, conspiracy theories. I know you don't like the word conspiracy theory, but let's just stick to like the more palatable issues. Sure, capitalism needs an army, and sure, capitalism needs a police and court system and property rights and rule of law. I'll accept, but I'm just saying with an example of a system that doesn't have the profit motive, isn't interested in reducing waste, isn't interested in property rights per se. Let's say.
Well, that's already false.
Okay, so we've got the USSR that happened an ecocide, and I've given an example of the US Army. Why do you think that a non-capitalist system, you haven't proven this, that the non-capitalist system will pollute less or will agree to be poor than capitalist
Pollution
system?
is does not stand in relation to poverty.
It kind of does. If you're producing less things to pollute
No,
less, or use less energy, let's say.
we are overproducing right now.
Sorry,
We are
so
producing so many things that are not necessary by just regulating those and producing more of those which we need. And by doing this in a way that's more efficient for the climate, can save. We can become carbon neutral by that.
okay,
Carbon positive.
so you're saying that a country will get rid of like, let's say we have 100 different cornflakes, yeah, and it's we don't need so many variety of cornflakes. We're gonna have one type of cornflakes, and we're gonna have basic things that everyone needs and
No,
no
that's
more
not
than
what I'm
that.
saying.
So I'm just
I'm saying that
okay.
for example, things like fast fashion, things like airplanes,
Okay.
fast fashion, for example, which produces so much carbon emissions, like the aviation and the boat industry together,
Okay.
which is completely unnecessary.
Okay. So
Things like
people,
that are cut first.
so we want people to stay at home, not do too much, or you know, use public transportation or walk or use a bicycle as much as possible. Not travel to other
No,
countries as much as possible.
no one cares about that.
Have a limited approved list of things they can purchase or own, so that we can. Sorry. So what is the end result of this again?
Well, the end result is becoming carbon positive and adapting and taking it out of the atmosphere again to make, well, to it's difficult to say in English, it's better in German, but to compensate and to, well, not destroy the planet anymore in short terms, in
Okay.
simple terms.
Would
This
you
is
agree
what
that
we're doing right now.
would you agree that this does seem like a sort of restrictive life? Like it's a less,
Well, you're already living as a restricted life.
but this is way more restrictive.
Well, the alternative to that is that the life that you're gonna be living in 30
Okay,
years, where
let me
the
ask
world is just not the same.
let me ask a different question.
Somehow you will need to live.
Why would the democratic country agree to the things you said?
It doesn't have to agree to that.
Okay, why would a group of voters vote for, flying less, using your car less, having a restricted list of things you can buy? Why would they agree to those conditions?
Well, it's the restrictive list of things you buy. Um, I know it's not descriptive of everything I say in the system, but it's not going to be that you'll be handed a list of things and you can check and you can check crosses and those things are going to be handed to you. It's still going to be a wide variety of things that you can obtain. But
Right,
it's
but
not going to be the case that you have
you're
the same
dictating it, right?
conflicts by 15 different brands. There's going to be one brand for some things, and there's going to be one brand for other things, but there's not going to be 10 brands for the same product, which is completely redundant.
Well, I don't know why that particular example is important, because even if you have 10 different brands, sorry, it's not like they're all producing the same amount of products. Like some brands are more popular than others and have a higher demand than others, and if a brand
Yeah,
isn't that popular, it's not producing,
and
millions of.
whoever gets to choose is going to choose the one with the best quality,
Well, you can
and
choose
the
the one
others
that
are,
you can choose the one that suits you by what you determine is valuable to you. But if one person does cheap, one person does expensive, one person does green, one person does shiny, and shiny to you is the best value, then you'll buy the shiny. But let's say the one who produces for the most cheap has like 10 million produces 10 million. The one most expensive produces 100,000.
and
It does, that
yeah, of course
that's
you won't
still
have the freedom anymore to buy the ones that you really want, but
right.
you also don't have the freedom to buy the car that you really want to buy right now.
But I just don't understand
So
why is it necessarily important? Because you can make the claim that if you produce too much stuff, then it's bad for the environment, let's just say. But that's not the case when you have 10 different brands. It's not that they overproduce. They they produce per what is the demand.
yeah,
Unless
I
you're saying
know
the
that,
demand
but
is too
by
high.
the production is too high.
The what, sorry?
The production is too high.
So in general, we need to produce less stuff.
Yes, of
Because
course. That's
I don't agree that the
the
variety is
main.
the issue.
No varieties. I mean, it's the issue by at some point where we start to produce things that are not necessary but are just another way to consume, another way to give the consumer a way to spend money because the system needs to make more money. That's how it works,
Okay, so
by
let me look
expanding
at
and
it.
by making a profit and by growing.
Let me look at it in another way. Would you agree that if stuff was more expensive, then people would not Like, sorry, people would not buy too much of it because it's more expensive. So if, for example, we slap like
Depends
a,
on inflation and other stuff.
sorry?
Depends on inflation and other stuff, and
Yeah,
also
exactly.
on
So
the
if
economic
for
situation
example,
of the country in itself.
yeah, I'm agreeing with you. So if we say we're gonna slap a 20% tax on everything we buy, then would that reduce people buying as much as they bought
Yeah,
before?
but only because there's so many people who couldn't afford it
Well, even people who
anymore.
can afford it, they like say, well, I don't need as much. Or let's say, you have a paper towel, right, in your kitchen. You say, do I need the whole square or can I just use half because it's expensive? Right? So I'm saying people can still have money, they can still buy a car, but do they have to buy that car? Do they have to buy two cars? Maybe they should only buy one car instead of two. So once you slap a tax on it, people will buy less of it and you've produced the result you want, yeah?
No,
No? Why
no,
not?
because it's not going to change anything.
It literally will. It will make stuff more expensive. So people will buy like the economy
Yeah,
will
but it's
shrink.
not going to last because
Why
because
not?
they need to because there's still going to be people who need it, but you can't afford it. How
But they
are they
but
going
they
to get it?
but they won't be able to afford it, so they won't buy it. Or they'll buy something cheaper.
Yeah, but they will need it.
So what? You want people to buy less.
I want people to produce less.
Same thing. If they don't demand it, no one will produce
Yes,
it.
by following the logic that supply and demand, of course, but in the system that you're talking about, supply and demand is not a thing anymore.
Why is it not a thing anymore? Your system, you mean?
You
Sure, but
you don't even know the system.
if you're just trying to produce, okay, let me do it a different way, right? If you're just trying to produce less, if you're trying to cool down the economy, you can just raise interest rates, central bank interest rates, and people will buy less stuff.
It's not the thing that I want people to buy less. I want people to produce less, and it's not the
Look,
number.
just for argument's sake, just let's agree that it will result in people producing less.
No,
It's just an economic fact. I don't see the point in arguing it right now.
the argument itself does not contribute to the debate.
You can set certain taxation or interest rates to cause the economy to produce less.
Yeah, but if they produce less, they're gonna sell less, but they need to sell more to remain on the market.
Well, they won't be able to sell more. People will just have less
And
stuff.
yeah, but that's a problem in the system which needs to be fixed because otherwise there's a problem in the system.
I,
Because
I,
companies,
I'm not following your
yeah,
point.
well, you companies need investors, right?
So you're saying that yeah, but there's always taxation. Like there's always been taxation. There's always central bank interest rates. They can always be higher.
Yeah, but it's not going to change anything
It
because
it will project the result of
still,
it.
when
The
when the
result.
investors see that the graph of the profit is not going to increase anymore, then who's going to invest in it if it's not able to make a profit and only a profit refinances the investment?
Oh, so you're saying the economy will slowly die because taxes are too high? Sure, I accept that. But
And
uh, but we have
how?
but we have that in Europe right now. Uh we have high taxes. I'm in the UK. We have high taxes. We have high energy costs. We have inflation. Or we're almost past inflation really. But we
Deflation,
have
right?
I don't think we have deflation at all. No, we just have low inflation. And we're thinking about reducing central bank interest rate, but it's still, I don't know, 5% ish, depends where you are. So just energy cost. If you increase energy cost, already Germany is deindustrializing. You've shut off your nuclear plants and turned on some coal plants. Not sure why, but you can't, like, electricity is expensive for steel manufacturing, for car manufacturing, and some companies are shutting up the factories and moving to places where energy is cheaper. So yeah, I mean, you can always deindustrialize and shrink the economy. If that's what but Europe wants to move to green, to be more green. So this is what happens.
Yeah, if we were to move to green within this system, but we were talking about moving to green in another system, which doesn't
Right,
follow
but
the rules
in
of the current system.
that it's not, from my point of view, that's not that relevant. Like, if you that's not super, like, if you try to deindustrialize either in capitalism, socialism, communism, or fascism, you'll still deindustrialize. That's the key point is the
Yeah, but the point
industrialization.
of deindustrialization in the socialism that people are talking about right now, it's always going to be in an economy that is moving the production the means of production from one thing to another. We're not producing as much of a quantity of different things anymore, but rather more of a smaller group of things which are really necessary. And by that, the amount of
No, that's
overproduction
not.
is
I
going
don't.
to decrease.
That's not what is happening, and that's also not what the European Union is asking to. The European Union is asking,
I'm not talking about what the European Union is
but
asking. I'm talking about.
it's relevant. So let's say that the European Union imposing stuff is on markets is outside of capitalism. I would not call that capitalism. Like, you could say it's leaning to the world that you want, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to aggressively double down, triple down on green energy and reducing CO2 emissions. And within that, they're trying to digitize. That's the word. Digitize the economy. So the things that the economy produces is no longer tangible, like cars or, I don't know, fashion, which is what Europe is, like, the top selling companies in Europe, basically cars and fashion. What they're trying to do is they're trying to, like, do software, AI, tech jobs, stuff like that.
So
So that's the green. That's the direction they want to go. Green and digitized. So it's not digitize is another way of saying move away from industrialization.
I'm not talking about the European Union, though. I'm not talking about their intents.
I
We're
know that you're
comparing
not. I
systems.
know that you're not. But I'm just saying it is
It
happening
simply doesn't
now.
matter.
It matters. It is happening now, and you can learn
But
the lessons from what you want to do.
but
It's
the
basically
framework on which it is happening is
basically.
completely different.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, yeah, but change the change within a system is not equal to the change in another system because the change follows different rules in another system.
Right, again. So in any case, what you're saying is you want to deindustrialize in any system. Yeah, you want to produce less, deindustrialize, same thing.
Oh, that's
I, I don't see any way around it. Like, and you wanna, like, you can add, like, things like, I want to deindustrialize this way or that way, but you want to deindustrialize. That's produce less. That's what you've said. Or use less
um
energy for production and
let's
produce
go
less
the other
stuff.
way around. So you would say that we need to produce more.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say we need to produce more. I mean,
Okay,
it's not
and
sorry, it's not like a blanket statement like we need to produce more rubbles to times infinity, but I think that we
we just
should.
overall production, fire, everything, more products, more everything,
Well, but
as long as we can, as
bear
dense
in
as we
mind, that the highest growth sectors in capitalism right now is tech and has been tech for the last 20 years. Those are not things that pollute too much. So I don't know,
can.
like I know that
Yeah, of
I know that
course.
communists are like in this Marxist mind frame, and we'll still talk about factories and stuff, but you can agree with me that a lot of people just have like a mobile phone that, and they don't
And you
have
can
too much
agree
stuff on
with
them.
me that the production of those things pollutes, and the maintenance of every server pollutes, where data is
It
stored,
doesn't
and
have to.
in the digitalization,
Does
data
does not have to.
is extremely worth
It doesn't have to.
always.
No.
Do you know how those server farms work?
Yes, they use electricity, but that doesn't have to be polluting electricity.
Well, in order for them to not pollute anymore, we would need to be completely on green energy.
No.
Well, how are they not polluting if the energy they use comes from coal plants?
Comes from where?
From coal plants,
You choose another form of energy.
which needs to be green in order not to pollute.
There are there. I don't know if you know this because maybe it's because you're German, but there is a power electricity producing power called nuclear, which is doesn't have CO2 and is extremely
Yeah,
abundant.
I know that, but it's, well, nuclear energy is not as sustaining as people say it is.
It's extreme. That's really funny saying oh sorry, sustaining as in the planet, or sustaining as in it has like a sustaining power, like it outputs a sustainable amount of not sustaining, consistent output of power. Which is it?
Oh, wait a second.
Because nuclear is very consistent. It's great. It's abundant. Like a small amount of uranium is extremely abundant with energy. So I don't know what else is the issue.
The issue is that not only CO2 is uh, greenhouse gas.
What greenhouse gases nuclear produce?
Um, not specifically, but there's a lot of things needed to sustain those, and to build the fuel rods, and to drain the water inside, and to cool those,
Okay.
and to maintain them.
There's a
And
variety
they were
of
just,
newer generation nuclear power plants that moved on from
where
water, but go on.
are they? Are they in Belgium? Are they in France? Because those power plants are on about 70% of their maximum constantly, because there's always something wrong with them.
I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest with you. I think it's made up.
Well, every time when there's a debate in the German
Yeah,
parliament,
I don't I considering Germany closed fully operational nuclear power plants because of some
considering
reason,
that they can't
I
speak about
really
power plants anymore.
look, I don't know what else to tell you except look at France. France, 73% of its electricity comes from nuclear. They're going to expand it. Right now,
Yeah, and those
let me
nuclear
just add
power
one
plants.
point. Sorry, it's relevant to the topic. So we said that the tech sector is the most high growth, or like all the money, or the majority of the money comes from the tech sector. And also when I say tech sector, like like if a bank uses computers, and that's also can be like the
Yeah,
computers, even though it's the finance sector, they use some tech. So the tech sector is the highest growth right now and has been for the last 20 years. AI is planned to use a ton of electricity, and new data centers are popping up around the world. And these new data centers for AI will come with their own small modular nuclear reactors, or several of them, because they simply cannot
Yeah.
rely on the country that they're in to produce enough electricity consistently for that data center. So all these new data centers for this purpose, as far as I've read, we're talking about Mercedes, Oracle. Oracle want to open something in Argentina. Microsoft, Google, all these people want to invest in nuclear to power the data centers that power AI. These are all going to be nuclear. You can look at small modular nuclear reactors. You can look at fourth generation molten salt reactors. China has recently come up with a nuclear power plant that can passively cool a nuclear, or at least the idea of passively is that it will never melt down because the passive cooling is so high that it will never melt down. I think the not melting down is more the point than the passive cooling forever. But and once you have these nuclear power plants, we're talking about, I mean, a regular nuclear power plant, not necessarily a small one, but a regular nuclear power plant is basically a ton of energy for like 100 years. You'd need to upgrade it at least once or twice within those 100 years. But we're talking
How
about
often would you
really
need to
abundant
maintain
energy.
them?
Sorry, go ahead.
Maintenance. What about issues? I've already told
Okay.
you that every big nuclear reactor in Belgium and France has issues right now.
Every nuclear reactor in Belgium and France has issues.
In some chambers there are constant issues, which is why they're
This
never
and
on full power.
these are important for us to discuss, or they just have regular issues.
Those are issues that are severely.
Crippling to nuclear, because I have not heard of crippling issues to nuclear. In fact, as far as I know, capitalism, again, these are all capitalists. None of this is government. These are all capitalist companies investing in nuclear. There's three large banks, investment banks, that want to see 3 times more nuclear power plants on the planet than there is now. So now there's like 400 overall on the planet. They want to see 1,200. Okay, so this is what we're talking about right now. This is where things are going. This is CO2 free. Uh, and
Yeah,
as far as I know, not no any other um gases released into the environment. You can make the claim that water
and
is needed, and
every
sorry.
out of every source of energy, nuclear power plants are the most prone to issues and errors.
I I look, we've had nuclear was invented in the mid 50s. Okay, there has been some high profile meltdowns like Chernobyl, right? And there has been like a case in Japan with a very large earthquake. But everyone is moving in this direction. They're making it safer and safer and more abundant. And like you can raise the point of radioactive waste. That's also something that's being handled. And everyone is moving in this direction. This is clean, abundant. I'd like to say cheap, but I'm not sure. I mean, once it's built, then the nuclear energy is cheap. Until it's built, it may cost a bit, but once it is built, nuclear energy is cheap and abundant. So that's what we have.
And it's also completely depleting the resources of its planet. And
We have enough.
they also need tons of water.
So the you can
They are
say it needs
also prone
you
to
can say it needs
issues.
tons of water. I think some of the newer ones are moving away from water. Um,
You need some kind
yeah,
of coolant.
but with regards to uranium, or things that can work in uses nuclear fuel. Sorry,
Uranium, thorium,
we
rhodium,
we have
cesium. Yeah,
we have enough reserves of those nuclear fuel materials till the heat death of the sun in our solar system. So deplete. So I don't exactly understand what your criteria is for not affecting the environment. Like you can't touch it at all. I don't know what your criteria is, but we have enough nuclear fuel for billions of years, 4 or 5 billion years.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a good thing, right? We're both cheering this direction, right? Both you with your desire for not harming, not emitting any additional CO2, and myself with making
Yeah,
energy
I can
abundant.
agree on that.
Sorry?
Yeah, I can agree on that.
Cool.
But there's still the problem that it doesn't solve the issues that we're having right now.
It look, let's look at it this way, right? Just nuclear in and of itself solves climate change. Okay, and let me even add a layer to this. If we this is I'm making this assessment, you can laugh or you can mock it, but I'm gonna say this. If we had full capitalism dialed up to 11, yeah, we would have had nuclear a long, long time ago. The reason why we don't have nuclear is because of government regulations, because people are afraid of it, and there's even a paper that says that because of Chernobyl, we lost something like 304 million years of life because they calculated in the paper that people decided not to move to nuclear. They stayed with things like coal. By the way, coal's been around for like 4,000 years. We're using 4,000 year old technology, or petrol, which we which we started using in like 1859, but started using properly. Actually, I'm not sure about that. We started using it like around 19 or something, using these really old energy technologies because the government is limiting us using nuclear. If we had capitalism died to 11, we would have decarbonized the grid in the 90s. We would be moving on to freight ships, nuclear freight ships, nuclear long haul ships. We would be considering nuclear long haul trucks. Yeah, the army does some of this stuff because it's not regulated. There is nuclear submarines, nuclear aircraft carriers, and there are these like trucks that can just plop like a nuclear battery in some sort of place and everything hooks up to it. So we could have had these things right now, and we would have produced a lot less CO2. And there's even like a graph that sometimes I don't know if you know of this movement called degrowth, if you've heard of it. But when people
Yeah.
when economists talk to people who promote degrowth, they show them like this graph where GDP goes up and CO2 emissions go down. So it's like, so it's saying we don't need degrowth. It's already like the separation between GDP and CO2 emissions are already being disentangled. But the reason why they're disentangled is simply because of nuclear. So if we had nuclear, if we
Even
had
with them going down,
if we had nuclear because nuclear was a good price because it is cheap, and if it wasn't heavily regulated till it's super super expensive, if we had nuclear just on capitalism, we would have decarbonized the grid by now, by like 30 years ago.
okay, and why do
And,
we
and
need
then and then
capitalism
and
for
then
that?
then like all the people who like promote climate change would simply be out of a job. Simply have to do something else. They would not have any purpose.
Okay, and we're just gonna forget the tipping points that are gonna be reached by then. We're just
You
gonna
you
forget
you
that
you
there's
have far less
irreversible damage already done to the planet.
irreversible damage. I disagree. What do you mean
Well,
irreversible damage?
there's tipping points.
You keep saying that, but I haven't seen any.
Well, of course you haven't seen them.
Okay. So I think the basically I think if I can summarize your arguments is any sorry, let me see if I can use the right words here. the planet is like a perfect in perfect harmony and balance of everything, and any CO2 that we pollute in quotations to the atmosphere, or anything we damage the Mother Earth, will only put us in a negative. Therefore, we have to literally be net zero. We have to be carbon neutral. We can't be in a situation where we increase carbon to the CO2 to the environment, because that's just really, really bad. And we have a tipping points. We'll have floods. Everyone's going to die in like 2 years, according to Greta Thunberg, and it's really going to be really bad. That's why we need to take action yesterday. The ice caps are melting, have melted.
Yeah, and they will melt. There's nothing we can do against it.
Great. Okay, but
That's already.
can I just point out that we've been hearing this for many decades now?
We've also been hearing for many decades that there's going to be huge. What's the thing that destroyed Florida? Nearly destroyed
Earthquakes,
Florida.
hurricanes.
Not. Yeah, yeah, hurricanes. We've
So
heard for
okay,
decades that there's going to be hurricanes, and now
right.
they
So
are here, and we're unprepared.
are you saying, okay? So let me ask this: are you saying that if we go net zero or carbon neutral, that hurricanes will cease to exist?
Of course not, but
Okay,
not
so
in the
then
amount and in their intensity that they are right now.
are you saying that hurricanes will be higher intensity than they are now, or lower intensity than they are now?
Of course, there's going to be natural things, but we should not put fire. We should not. Um,
Okay, so I will say this, right? If we have access to more energy, and by energy, let's just take fuel, just like oil, yeah? If we have cheap available oil, the worst kind, or like relatively bad, I don't know. The more of those we have, the more machines we can use from this energy to build structures that can maybe withstand a hurricane. If we can't, then we can have cars that move people away from the hurricane and save their lives. And we can have all these things if we have access to energy. Without access to energy, we can't do these things. And when I say these things, I mean try to adapt to the climate.
yeah,
Now
but
if
with energy, we could also mitigate in the first place those things to
no,
happen. We could also prevent them.
but you're trying to use less energy than I am.
It doesn't matter how many energy we use.
It
It
does.
only matters
It does.
which
It does.
energy.
Well, you're saying you want to use less of it, but be like more frugal about what it goes to, but it's still less energy. And I'm saying if we have more energy and more access to it, then 3 billion people around the planet could make like houses with concrete or with stones that they could survive the harsher environment much easier. Now, I would also add, I'm not sure if you've heard of this metric, but basically, if you're saying that climate change is getting worse over time, we're seeing temperatures increase over time, then how and the environment is getting worse, and how do you explain the fact also from world in data that in the last 100 years, or the deaths from climate related activities, climate related deaths have gone down by 98%, and the trend keeps going down.
It keeps going down.
Yeah,
There's 50 degrees in the shadows in Africa. There's millions of people fleeing from their houses because they're just gonna die if they remain in their houses in Florida.
because of hurricane. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
which is one
Well,
example.
we both of us will have a hurricane.
There's it doesn't matter how the numbers are evolving right now. It matters how they will evolve, and they will
Well,
evolve into dramatic.
I'm just saying you can't make the claim that a hurricane only exists in my world and not in yours.
I did not make this claim. I already
Sure.
said that, of course, hurricanes are going to remain in this world because the planet is still way too complex for us to eradicate hurricanes. But
Okay.
what we can do is make sure that the cause for those hurricanes aren't is not humanity itself. We can make sure, or we should make sure that the intensity of hurricanes, if they occur, if they happen, is not as high as they are as it
I
is right
don't think
now.
we have any control over that.
Well,
I think the only thing we have,
you have
I
already
don't,
said that
let,
because of no, you have already said that because of climate change, the intensity increases. Because, for example, Milton in Florida, there's never been such an intense hurricane since the beginning of the records. And there's a direct correlation between climate change and this hurricane. And there's also a direct correlation between
how is,
humanity and climate change through capitalism. It's already been proven that this relation exists.
so I don't agree there's a direct correlation between hurricanes and climate change because whenever I ask for this correlation, I have people give me like the last 40 years of hurricanes, and in this graph you see like hurricanes go up. But if I zoom out to 100 years, it's practically the same. Like it just there's like more
Yeah,
hurricanes at
of
the start
course they
of
happen, but they don't happen as often. The
no
frequency
no the
increases and it increases
frequency
drastically.
even if you say that the frequency is 10 or 20% more frequent, it would still be better to have to for us to adapt to this than it is through having access to cheap energy than not having it. You'll save more lives uh, with having access to energy than you would without. And you also have no evidence. Like, sorry, you also have no evidence that if we go carbon neutral, if we like do serious reductions in our economy, that the hurricanes will become less weaker, sorry, over time or less frequent. Or basically, the argument that you would make to me is that we need to suck out CO2. We don't need to be net zero carbon neutral. We have to be negative, carbon negative.
Yeah, of course,
So this is
because
like
at the current point,
and even in this
we've
scenario,
already
you don't
crossed.
necessarily have proof that it will work. You're assuming it will
Well, the
work.
alternative is dying to
The
this.
alternative is to adapt to the climate using machines and energy.
Yeah, but how are we going to do this if the people who have the funds and the means for this are building climate bunkers in New Zealand instead of doing it?
Well, again, if energy is cheaper and we can produce machines that or cars or things that build houses using concrete, the more we make these things cheaper and more available to regular people, or even like poor people in Africa, in Latin America. If we do those things, then more people will adapt to the environment better. If we can make energy super cheap for people in India, and like there's a city in India that has 50 Celsius temperature, then if everyone in this city had very strong air conditioning or fans, then they'll be able to
And
adapt to
how is
this.
this fair?
How is this? What, sorry?
How, it's just completely inhumane because
Why is it inhumane?
they are not the cause of this. The cause of this are other humans, and those other humans are capitalists who, through funding and through lobbyism and through corruption, were investing in things that were the cause for those things that other people need to solely put their life around not dying to those causes,
So,
to
so I,
those things.
so that's a colorful way of describing. But basically, if we look at it more objectively, it's saying
That's
that
reality.
no, it's not reality. What we're saying
It
is that
is.
hold on. What we're saying is that people have industrialized sooner in the past, and
Not
as a
on
result of
that
this,
scale that they are right now. And of course, the results are not comparable because the scale is not comparable.
hold on. People have industrialized in the past faster. During this time of industrialization, they have released CO2 in the atmosphere. Now that it's the turn of poorer countries. Well, I would argue that now it's the turn of poorer countries, and they need to go through the same steps that European and American countries did like 100 years ago, but that would require polluting or emitting CO2, sorry. And they still need to go through that process, and they need to go through that process because they need to improve their infrastructure to advance to adapt to the
Yeah, but
climate.
we've already established that they can't do this because in the first place there's not enough resources for them to start doing that. We've
Why
already established
why
that in
not?
Africa, for example, there's not enough resources to grow soil and to
Africa is
harvest enough for the
Africa.
population to
Look,
sustain.
I don't agree. Africa is a very large continent with oil, with minerals, with rare earth minerals, with steel, iron, lithium, all of the above.
Yeah, and
You
who
can
who
have a
harvests those resources? It's not the Africans, I can tell you. It's other companies from America buying those lands, and who's
again
getting who's
again.
getting the resources from them? It's not the
We'll
Africans.
okay. Look, I don't know. I don't exactly know how I can communicate this in a neutral way necessarily. But let's say that you know the period of growth that Western countries had in like the 20th century. So let's say between 1860 and 1910, all Western countries, sorry, all of them like a lot of them industrialized. Talk about England, Germany, Sweden, definitely America. They all industrialized. They were talking about coal again. We didn't really have what, but they did have electricity. They had railways. They I don't know with regards to access to like particular resources, but even countries that didn't have too much resources were able to industrialize. England had coal, obviously. Sweden not so much, but Sweden did very well during this time as well. So all these countries grew during this time, and if you imitate the conditions that they had then and apply it to Africa, you would have that same growth.
Where does the human originate from? From which continent?
I'm not sure if the answer is Africa per se.
It is Africa, and
I
they
think
expanded from Africa because
I've
there's
recently
nothing.
heard arguments against that.
Well, and I've heard arguments for it.
No, I know for a long time everyone said that because like all the continents were joined up together. Um, but
Which was the case, yes.
I think basically you had like collections of pre-human, like like I forget the names of it, but there were like all these like pre-human variants like
Primates.
Neanderthal or something or Homo erectus and all those kinds. I don't really remember the name, but all of them died out, or most of them died out except one, and that became human or something along those lines. I'm terrible at this, but
Yeah,
basically
I study evolutionary biology.
you had that going on in many parts of the planet. So I'm not necessarily sure that the current argument being made is everyone came from Africa. I could be wrong, but again, I'm not very knowledgeable in this area.
No, the origin of human is Africa.
Okay,
Pretty sure.
let's do for argument's sake it came from Africa. What is the point?
The point is that we came from there and we moved to other way more prosperous areas, Europe, USA later, and and Asia, Russia, all of those areas which were more prosperous,
Okay,
which we can see because they actually came they advanced through the agricultural revolution and got into the um, into the industrial revolution, but Africa was stuck on the um, what's wait, oh, on the agricultural revolution, which is the cause for them being so poor right now. And now you say that we will be able to supply cars and things to adapt to climate change to them, which I just find is not humane and not fair to them because they did not even contribute to climate change at all, but now need to live under the consequences that other people are causing. Because climate change
I'm not
is
sure.
a real thing, and in Africa there's temperatures of 50 degrees in the shadows, and people are actively dying from it. People are also dying from starvation, 8 million people, 7 million people per year. And there's also nothing that they can do about it, because what they need would be funds from other countries to grow, because they can't grow on their own. But who's going to fund the country, or who's going to invest in a country that's not going to be able to put that investment back with a profit, which is why capitalism sucks, on my opinion. It's just not humane. You put
Okay,
profit above the human life.
let me look at it in a different way. Why is it that people in Europe, elderly people and poor people in Europe, need to freeze to death over the winter because the price of energy to heat up their home is too high for them to actually turn it on, and the result is 68,000 people dying across Europe? In a rich country, although it was like everyone, like the
The
price of everyone's electricity has gone up, went up at the same
reason for
time.
that is that humans decided to put a price tag on the human life itself.
No,
to
but there's
put a
no,
price tag
there's
on
no,
the basic
but
needs.
there's no unlimited anything. So any way you look at it, there's a scarcity of something. That scarcity is articulated through prices, but there'll still be a scarcity. Some people won't get electricity to heat up their home, and the reason why was because of this green energy policy, or the green energy mix that the European Union decided to go on, which made it
And I'm also
more
judging
expensive.
that, but the reasons for that,
No, but you're
I'm
saying there
also
are poor
judging,
people. You're saying there are
and the
poor people
causes.
in Africa that are now suffering from the planet heating up by like 1 Celsius more, or 1.5 Celsius more than it did before. So like it's 50 in the shade, but it otherwise would be 49 in the shade, or 48 and a half in the
You
shade.
don't seem to understand global warming.
Okay, an area I've also studied. But in addition to this,
But then,
in
if you
look
study
look
climate
we
change, you can't say something like 1% change in the global climate is going to change from, this is responsible for the change from 49 to 50 degrees.
but
That there's just no relation. It's a global
okay, but in addition to
mean.
this, rich countries in Europe took the conscious decision to go with the direction you wanted, that resulted in the poor people in those rich countries freezing to death.
Well, it's not
Was it
what
their
I
fault?
wanted.
Was it their fault that the government made that decision?
Come again?
Was it the people who died to death's fault that their government made the decision to move to green to move to use more green energies, and as a result, and a combination of other things, spiked the price of electricity, which caused them not to turn it on in the winter, and they froze to death in their own home.
But the point I'm making is that because there's a price tag on energy in the first place, people
That's an irrelevant
are
point.
dying, and
That's an
because people
irrelevant
cannot
point.
afford it.
That's an irrelevant point.
No,
You'll have
that's the
you
point that I'm
can't.
criticizing about.
That's an irrelevant point, because you can't tell me that if there wasn't a price on it, that will stop electricity from being scarce. It would still be scarce. The fact that the price is higher indicates that it is scarcer than it was before.
That, well, yeah, of course, resources are scarce, but this doesn't mean that there's not enough of them to contribute to distribute them. Things like energy, for
It
example.
would still be if we reduce the energy.
And if we were to
If
improve,
we have a situation, okay, where we invested in wind turbines across Europe, and in that particular cold winter, because it was so cold, the wind capacity went down to 10% of what it was expected to be. So when it is cold, the wind is less. Okay?
Yeah, but in that scenario, which you're talking about, we would have to be completely reliant nationally on wind turbines, which will
No,
never be a thing.
no,
Yes,
not
because only
necessarily.
then it's going to be relevant to
No,
the
it's
situation.
not that you have to be 100%. No, if you're 100% relying on wind turbine, then you go down to 10%. You'll always have some sort of backup. In this case, the backup is natural gas or coal, but usually natural gas. So you'll always have some sort of, if you can go from 100% to zero, you need to have 100% backup. But even if you have 40% or 20% and that 20% disappears, then you need to pay more for the more natural gas. And everyone in Europe needs to do it at the same time. And it causes spikes to increase. So the energy just wasn't there to distribute. It did not exist. It wasn't, the energy was not made, did not come into reality for it to then be distributed. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because we didn't start to um how do I articulate this? Because in the past we didn't change the origin of our energy because coal was cheaper, because we always go after the
We
thing
did.
that's cheapest, not
No,
the
no,
thing that's
we absolutely did change. We 100% changed it. We removed coal from the energy, or we tried to remove coal as much as possible from the energy mix. 'Cause that was the highest thing that contributed to reduction in CO2 emitting emitting gases. So if
we tried, you say.
no, that was the idea. We aggressively removed coal from England and other countries in Europe. Not so much Eastern Europeans, but certainly Western Europeans
But the
removed
world
coal
doesn't end in
first.
Western Europe and the UK.
Sorry.
The world doesn't end in Western Europe and the
Well, I'm
UK.
specifically talking about I'm specifically talking about the people who died in Europe, and I'm saying we removed coal, or we didn't have coal in the energy mix. We in the UK we actually exploded. We detonated coal factories. We thought we wouldn't need them, and then we moved to natural gas. England, for example, went from an energy exporter while having coal to an energy importer, meaning UK didn't produce enough energy to meet all its needs. It needed to import energy in the form of natural gas, I believe, and some from France, or electricity from France. We need to import those energies to meet the needs of the British public. And when all the other countries in Europe needs natural gas at the same time, the price goes up. Now, even if Europe had enough energy to meet all the needs of its people, that necessarily means that people in India and in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh would not have had access to natural gas to heat their homes because it just didn't exist. That's why we need abundant energy, not reducing energy.
Okay, the scenario that you're opening is that because Europe,
Let me look at it another way, right? You said people in Africa are paying for stuff that other European or Western countries, industrialized like 100 years before. Do you think do you think a hospital in Africa right now needs access to consistent electricity?
yes, of course it does.
Do you think a baby incubator in that same hospital in Africa needs access to consistent electricity? Because if the incubator does not have consistent electricity, the baby will die.
We both know it does. Where are you going with this? What's the point?
So I'm saying it's valuable to give people in Africa more energy, much more energy than they have now, so they can develop. And the argument for, well, it will be 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% hotter is completely irrelevant. It's not even the fifth, sixth, seventh on the list. Like, first you need access to an energy for a variety of different things that saves people lives and makes their lives better and helps them adapt to the environment or survive the environment. Sorry, go from survive to thrive. before you have like, oh, it's slightly hotter or even a lot hotter.
And how are all of these things bound to capitalism?
Because capitalism is more productive, produces things more efficiently than any other system, as far I think you'll agree. And if the government doesn't stop it, would have given people in Africa access to more electricity.
Well, they could already do that, but they don't. They already need this,
Well,
but
to
they
some,
don't.
so I would say that the green energy policies that people that countries in Europe and in America are promoting make it difficult for people in Africa to have access to coal and oil, or even seek investments
It's
to get those
it's
things.
not energy, it's resources in general. They lack any.
Sorry?
It's not just energy, it's resources in general which they need, and they lack any.
They need more. They have the country itself has resources, a lot of resources.
Yeah, and
They
where
just
they're
need to have
going,
the infrastructure to access those resources.
yeah, which the US provides, and the US takes the resources.
Right. They can have
And
access to
companies
those.
like Nestle.
They can have access to those resources. Again, I've discussed this already. There are things stopping it. But I could add, in the case of coal, certainly, countries in Africa will not get loans from European countries to then make a coal factory. They won't allow it.
Yeah, what they do in Europe right now is invest in European companies to build something that not those countries, but the European
Europe,
countries dictate.
again, Europe isn't
To
building
fit
any.
to
Europe is not building anything. Europe is deindustrializing.
Germany is doing this.
Germany is deindustrializing. Yes.
No, what Germany does is it pays German companies to build things in other countries to put something into its own economy rather than giving some other country's economy money to do the things that they really need because it's better for Germany to
I
put it into their own.
I have no clue what you're talking about. You could be right. I have no idea. I don't
Well,
know
I am
to
right.
and I don't know
I
to
live in this
I
country.
don't know to what scale that's happening. It could be completely insignificant. It could be somewhat significant. I don't know. I don't think that's gonna change things either way.
Well, the motivation is gonna stay the same. The motivation is that why would we invest in somebody who can't give me this investment back?
You can
This is the
absolutely
mindset that capitalism
you can
enhances,
absolutely
that they
invest.
provide.
So if you had in Africa, which you don't
The
have right
point of
now,
an investment is to have
one
to
second. Let's say Africa is a developing market. Okay, it means there's
yeah.
high risk and high reward. Like you could make a lot of money if you get something right in Africa. And let's say that the government corruption that I mentioned went away mostly. Let's also say that the rule of law was implemented in Africa properly. And let's say that property rights were respected in those countries. So those are the conditions for capitalism.
Do you
Let's say,
mean like in Burkina Faso or after what example?
let's take Botswana. Okay? So so the British were asked to administer Botswana for a number of years. They instituted the rule of law and property rights, and Botswana is doing very well. There's a couple of other things as well, but specifically the points that I'm talking about were implemented there. Again, Botswana isn't like 100% ideal in everything in any in every respect, but those elements that capitalism requires as a minimum exist there. And then you come in from Europe and say, I want to invest in this developing market. There's a good chance I'm going to make like a very good return, and they invest them. Why not?
Well, if this chance is high, why are they not investing in Africa right now?
I think
What's keeping them away
I think Botswana
from
is
doing
seeing
so?
I think Botswana is seeing investment.
What about Africa, though? There's people in Africa,
Well, I
or
mean,
not in
look,
Botswana.
you have South Africa, which isn't doing very well. The government's a mess. The government's talking about being a communist. Well, what is it? The Economic Freedom something group party with the red shirts. Um, like it's obviously has an issue with government, with management, and with lack of investment. But I'm making the case that it's because of property rights are not protected very well and rule of law is not implemented very well. If they get those things right, and I'm sure that there are better examples where they have in Africa, then I would foresee that capitalists would pour investment into those areas. They have no reason not to. I mean, if they want to make good money, and they say, I want to allocate my capital here because I believe there's growth going to happen in this country in Africa,
How
and
would you
I'm
make
willing to.
money
Sorry.
by putting money into a completely unintact and completely inefficient society?
Why is it inefficient?
How would you make money back from them?
Well,
Well, with the
if
government that is corrupt and completely
no,
gone mad.
I'm already saying that if the government is corrupt and and people don't respect the property rights, then you will not see investments.
Yeah, but if the government changes, the
But
previous government has
if
already
that's a consideration
made an impact on its people.
if that's a consideration
So,
that would also make it difficult to invest. But if that is not a risk, if the political system has that stability to some degree or a high degree, has property rights protection to a high degree, then you would see investments come in. Maybe like I don't know how fast or how slow, but you would see them come in.
okay, but you would need to wait until the people could do something for this investment, that you get something back from them.
Well, when you invest in something, you invest in something specific. Like you could say, a factory. They want to build a factory. You're investing you're allocating capital to build that factory, and then the assumption is that once the factory is up and running, you'll take a cut of the profits.
And just because there's humans there which are starving and dying right now,
But those
isn't
humans
enough
would
of a reason to put money into it.
those humans would you mean those humans would
You you
benefit those
you
humans
only
would
care
benefit.
about them if they work for you. Am I
Sorry.
right? You only care about human lives if they can work for you. Am I
So
right?
are
Because
are
otherwise
you
they would
familiar?
already invest in those human lives.
Are you familiar? So this is bullshit what you're saying. Are you familiar with the slogan "Trade, not aid" when it comes to Africa?
Um, what is the slogan gonna say? What is it gonna
So
mean?
this slogan "Trade, not aid" refers to the fact that trillions of dollars has been poured into Africa over the decades, and people have saw nothing grow from that.
And how has it been poured into it?
Let me hold on.
Who got the money?
Go with the pen and paper and find out. I don't know. Trillions of dollars have been poured into Africa, and you haven't seen
Well, if you
immense
don't
growth
even
from.
know
You haven't
how this
seen
money is used,
you haven't seen immense growth from this. But when you have a situation where you trade with countries in Africa, that grows economies and industries within Africa, sustainable industries, because you keep trading. So the idea is when you do business with countries in Africa, not send them free money or send them free stuff. You say, I want to buy your stuff and now I'm willing to pay for it because it benefits me greedily or selfishly. Then industries and economies in those countries develop, and that's a consistent way for people there to have jobs, to have improved quality of life, to have more food, to have more stuff, to have more different clothes, more electronics, better infrastructure, better water pipes, All those things happen with trade, not aid. It's a very common slogan. You can research it and see the
No, I
results.
really don't care about that slogan because it's bullshit. Because it
It's
just
not bullshit. It's the official UN
no,
poverty way
it
of.
correct. It,
I don't know what to tell you. Sorry.
well,
That's
it does one thing pretty good, and that is characterizing the mindset of capitalists, which is that rather you should trade instead of helping people for without
no. It means the
looking for
trade.
something that they could possibly give you
No,
back.
no. It means the trade
Yes.
is helping people.
Well, if it was the intent to help people by
No,
trade
you
and
don't.
by aid,
You
they
don't
could already
understand.
help them.
It doesn't matter what the intent is. That's the beautiful thing is. It doesn't matter what the intent is. There's a harmony of interest. This is basic capitalism 101.
Well, how many of interest is killing millions of people right now?
No. This stop
Actually,
bullshitting.
yeah.
Look, I've answered all your points. So I'm just
How
gonna
many are dying every year
I've answered all your
just in
points. So
Africa?
I'm just gonna answer this one economic principle for your benefit, and I think we'll call it a night. So basically, in a trade, you have two parties coming into it. Both are selfish. Like for the sake of argument, both are rational actors, rational economic actors. Both are completely selfish and do things for themselves. When they engage in this trade, both walk away with the surplus of something. So let's say I have a toy, and to make this toy I had to spend 20x or 20 just say dollars, $20, and I want to sell it for $40. And this person who comes into the trade with me sees this toy, and to them the value of this toy to them is $60. Like they estimate that the value of it is much more than the $40 I want to sell it. So we come to a trade. Some person bought the toy from me. They benefited $20 worth of value. I sold the toy. I benefited in $20, and both of us benefited. That's a win-win exchange. All trades, if they're voluntary, are win-win trades because if you don't benefit from it, you would just walk away from the trade. So when we have something like that,
Win-win mistake.
we have a harmony of interest because both of us are selfish and both of us cooperated with one another. We traded and both of us benefited. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. That trade, not aid, in the context of Africa means that trade is factually, objectively helping the economy of Africa, helping them helping grow industries there, which then hire people, which then buy capital investments, which then people have more money to spend and increases the quality of their lives. And the government gets taxes on them and does water pipes so people can have more access to water. All those nice things happen when you start doing trade with Africa.
You said win-win.
Yeah,
There's two sides winning, but one side, if if the investing side would be actually caring about the other side,
it doesn't need to. That's
who's
the beautiful.
also winning, you say,
It doesn't need to. I mean, again.
and they don't care. They
They can
objectively
both.
also don't care.
But listen, it's important. Both people walk into a trade with selfish intentions. Both want to benefit themselves, but the trade itself results in a selfish benefit to both parties who walked into the trade. They don't need to care about the other, or let's say maybe they need to care in the sense that will this item sell well? So I need to care that other people will buy this item. So in that respect, but ultimately both people are working for selfish reasons. They both come out with benefits from it, and two people benefited from the trade. That's what the amazing, beautiful thing is about capitalism.
Okay, and we should wait until Africa gets their stuff right so we can invest into them.
No, we need to wait for Africa to enable capitalism.
Quick question: would you say you care about the people in Africa?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
That's why I want them to have
Well,
electricity to
it's
power those
objective.
incubators.
It's fact that there's millions of people dying in Africa right now, just in Africa, due to starvation. And the cause of starvation is that we do not supply the resources that we should be supplying for them to survive.
That's not true. We send food to Africa as well, just dry food.
Okay, but it's also true that there's still millions of people dying, so we don't send enough. Effective.
No, so the problem with what you're saying is it's not that we don't make, you're saying we make a lot of food, but it's not the problem that of making the food. The problem is this getting the food to those people. So can we get food to every single person in Africa? Like, do we have the fuel and oil to take like
Yeah.
food from one country to another before it spoils and reach that particular person within a reasonable use of resources so they can keep eating? Do we have that? No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so if we have that, then we can already feed everyone in Africa because food is not that expensive. And you know, UN gets money to distribute food already, so it's not even a matter of profit.
It's a matter of profit because if it wasn't,
It's already
we'd
paid
already
for.
do that.
It's already paid for.
Well, if it's already paid for, why are we not supplying it?
Because there's an issue of logistics.
And where does this issue originate?
Because you need to move product from country A to reach a particular person in country B, and that requires logistics, and we simply don't have that on the scale that we need to for
We
Africa.
do. We have.
I just told you the word logistics, and you already assume we have that. We don't. We don't have roads in every place in Africa. We don't have access to oil to the degree that we need to get to everyone. So we already don't have it.
So you're saying with the combined knowledge of like the entire West and East, let's say, we couldn't supply Africa with enough food.
We can maybe do it for like a day, but not every day.
We are already producing enough
Yes,
food for 10 billion people.
but that's fantastic, but you need to get the food from one place to another. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
Yes, obviously we
And
do need to
we are
transport it.
unable. Just the short version is we don't have that capacity for
And
the
I'm
case of
also not
Africa.
saying that we need to supply the entire continent of Africa with food. I'm saying is that we need to make it possible for them to supply themselves and to make it
I
rich for
agree.
it.
I agree. We need to make it possible for them
And
to
the
supply
reason why
themselves.
we are not doing it is because it's not profitable.
No, there's nothing to. You're basically saying you need the people of Africa to produce food, plentiful food for themselves. That's what you're saying. There's nothing to do with profit or us wanting profit. They need to be there
But the
doing it,
reason
right?
why they're not already why they're not able to do it as of now is because we are not making it possible for them.
How are we not making it possible? What do we need to make possible?
Because there's not enough investment. Let's say, for
Okay,
example, one project
let's say someone wants to grow a field of tomatoes. What do we in the West need to do to enable someone to plant a field of tomatoes?
well, it also depends on the soil
Sure,
and everything else.
sure.
Yes, of course. There's nothing to plant on unnutritious soil.
There's obviously parts of Africa which has good soil.
Yeah, and there's not enough resources for them to plant something on it or to do it. And if
No,
those,
I'm already saying that you need to plant where you can plant.
yeah,
Like
and
I don't
this little
exactly
percentage of land that
I
is
don't exactly
plantable that is nutritious enough is already being land grabbed by the USA.
I don't
They
exactly
don't even own
I
the
don't know
land
what
anymore.
that means, but I don't see how
Land
you're
grabbing is the
expecting
process
I don't see how you're
of
expecting
companies. No, let me
capitalism
finish.
or global capitalism to magically grow tomatoes in the Sahara Desert, and if they don't grow there, then it's the fault of capitalism.
No, that's not what I said. Of course, when what I'm saying is that there is space to grow things on, but
Okay.
instead of instead of making it possible for them to grow things on that space through land grabbing, which is a process of companies, for example, from the
Listen,
USA,
Africa. No,
buying
I don't accept this.
those.
I don't
But
accept this.
it's fact. This
I don't accept this,
it's
and I'll
fact.
tell you
But
why. I'll tell you why.
you don't accept facts.
I'll tell you why I don't accept it. Africa is a very, very large place. If someone drills in one point, that doesn't mean that all the other areas of land isn't available for growing vegetables on. And once you know Africa moves from a third world country to a second world
Yeah,
country,
but
where less people work in agriculture, then we can make use of less and less land to produce more and more food.
we've spent so much time talking about so much nonsense. But
Look, I answer.
just Africa.
I look. Let's summarize quickly, okay? I believe we focused about climate change. We focused on industrialization. We focused on energy production or clean energy production. We focused now on Africa. In all the cases that we've discussed, I believe I have given you an answer where we could have sustainable long-term growth and future growth, and all of them obviously, from my point of view, revolve around producing more things and having access to more energy. But I believe that I've answered all your points, in particular climate change.
You said that 1% in change of global temperature makes the difference between 49 and 50%. You didn't even understand climate change at this point.
Well, I also said
And
I
you
also said that
obviously don't
if
seem to
I also
understand the
said that if you had
consequences of climate change to the planet. No, obviously not.
I also said that if you have an area that has 50 Celsius in India, for example, there's a city right now has 50 Celsius. If we have that, if they all have access to air conditioners and the cheap abundant energy to run those air conditioners, they would obviously survive that temperature change much better than not having them. Or if it was 1, 2, 3, even if it was 47, even if it was 44, 6 Celsius points less, it still doesn't matter that much. It's still very high heat.
And if people didn't sell human lives for the benefit of the profit,
Profit
the
is
issue
great.
of
Well,
50 degrees,
profit is amazing. What's wrong with profit? Why do you keep saying the profit is bad?
because
I just showed you an example.
profit has a
I
higher value than fucking human lives at this point.
I just showed you an example where two people
Because when
engage in a
companies
trade.
like Amazon ask themselves, how could we maximize profit? The answer is by cutting the working conditions of our workers.
No.
Yes,
That
yes, yes,
that's
yes.
a false.
They let them pee in fucking bottles. No, it's not.
That's a false dichotomy. No, it is.
No, it's
So
simply not.
first of all, I've already explained to you in a trade how a trade works. So profit comes from when you sorry, profit is located in the pockets of your customers. First of all, right? Cutting costs is like after is a much later stage. Profit is located in the pockets, in the money of the pockets of your customers. You need to persuade them to give that they will give you their money. And how do you persuade them in a voluntary exchange? That you have something that they can benefit or improve their life from, that they're willing to give you their money. That's where profit comes from. That's already, does that not sound like something that cares about other people already?
Yeah, you really care about other people when you need to make a
You need to
profit
persuade them.
on.
You need to persuade them to give, for them to give
So
you their money. How do you do
you
that?
need to persuade them to buy things that are a benefit for them and make a
Yeah,
profit. You need to
that
persuade
sounds
them
like
the things that.
you're literally making their lives better.
And what again are the consequences of this?
What are the consequences of making people's lives better? That their lives improve.
Yeah, worsening the lives of millions of others.
That's bullshit.
Um,
It's just
no, it's not.
nonsense. You're just catastrophizing and using your imagination.
It is a catastrophe.
Yeah, you're
Look
just
out!
no, but
Look out the
listen.
fucking.
You're
No, the world is burning.
okay. Okay. Well, I hope we have enough energy to turn on the air conditioning if that is the case.
Well,
And by the way, if you're so concerned about heating, about the world increasing in heating temperature, isn't that like a good thing in the context that humans
that's obviously made of
die
sure,
nine
but
times more in cold than in heat? I just gave you a statistic where 68,000 presumed people died in the winter because they couldn't turn on the heating. If it was warmer, none of them would die.
yeah, and the origin of all of our food is plant-based because animals also need plants, and droughts
No,
are
I
harming
just I
plants way
just
more than
said
floods.
I just said if that was a warmer winter, none of those people would die. Do you understand that cold is nine
And
times
I
more
just said
deadlier
that
than
people
heat?
would be starving if the temperature increases. So what?
Sorry, what?
And I said that people are gonna die because there's not gonna be enough food if the temperature increases, and there's not gonna
Okay,
be
but
enough
all
nutritious soil to plant
that
food on.
that's nice, but once again, if you go to the world in data, all food productions are climbing. The trend is only going up, it's not going down. So where is this thing where people will starve? Because it's just not happening.
Well, there's actively people starving.
Okay, but we're
I told you
actively we're
10
actively
times,
making more food for everyone. I mean, maybe we can
but
do
we're
it.
not distributing it,
Oh,
which
okay,
results in people
okay,
still dying.
okay. Maybe we can do it faster if people start using capitalism. We can solve the problem if people start using capitalism or make the conditions for capitalism to begin. This profit thing,
Wealth of nations
this
truly
profit
is your
this
Bible,
this
isn't it?
this profit thing that you hate so much equals more production, more food, more energy,
You're
better
studying human
lives,
life for profit.
more distribution for everyone without destroying shit. And you keep seeing it as something negative when you can look at the results with your eyes and see that it's a positive thing. We used to be poor. The
A positive thing. Do you know what?
99.99% of civilization used to be poor for the majority of human history
And
till we
and
started
now
using
it's
capitalism.
and now it's 730 million people still in extreme poverty and 1.1
Okay,
billion
but
people in
eight
poverty.
but 7.3 billion of them have food and have food and are not poor.
And we
So you're
haven't
so you're bullshitting.
seen any change in the
You're
others.
bullshitting because you just have a way of
Where am I
catastrophizing.
bullshitting?
This is not objective reality, and you should really consider having an objective look on things. And if you're interested in improving the situation, then see where you can improve the situation, and not expect to tear down entire economic systems.
Well, capitalism is still complete fucking bullshit. Did you read IPCC?
Yeah, several times.
I bet. Okay, well, and you still don't accept the fact that climate change is a
Climate
real thing and
adaptation.
destroys the planet
Did I say?
actively right
Sorry,
now.
I did you just say I don't accept climate change? Because I don't think I said that at any point in time.
And I didn't say that. I said that you don't accept the fact that climate change is actively destroying the planet
No,
and worsening its conditions.
I said that humans can adapt to the climate. That is in the IPCC report, and we can do it. We can adapt better with more access to
Yeah, we
energy.
can adapt to the causes of our own actions.
Look, if there's if we need to make changes to our environment because it's hotter, colder, more wind, more bugs, less bugs, that it's irrelevant. We just need to do it.
Yeah, we need to do it because there's no other option now
Yeah, and the best
because
way to do it
we've come to a
is
point.
and the best way to do it is with technology, with innovation, with adapting to the climate. We can't just
Yeah,
sit here and
and
like
where do we need capitalism for that?
we
Where
can't
do we
just
need a system that
but
puts profit in front of human lives?
you're basically saying we need to stop all industrialization and hope and pray that things improve by like 10% than they are now. And I'm saying we
Yeah,
can
that's pray to fucking God.
because look, you're saying we need to like go carbon negative. We need to do like very severe things to go
And you say that we
you're
don't
basically
need to do
saying
that.
going backwards to pre-industrial civilization, or like going
We need
backwards
to
is
come
feasibly
to a
possible.
point where we're not contributing or where we're negatively
No, we need
contributing
to
to the
no, no,
destruction of the planet to
not
reverse it
yeah. We
as
need
much
to
as we can.
yes. It's
Because
not
otherwise the planet,
it's not only we need to go to pre-industrial stage of society. We need to actually suck out CO2 from the environment, which, by the way, you can do with trees.
yeah, if you wouldn't just deforest everything for soil.
The planet has never been more green. Ask NASA.
Okay, how many acres, how many millions of acres are being destroyed every year
The
of the
planet is,
Amazonas, for example, which
despite
is
all
one of
those
the
things,
biggest CO2 resorts in the world.
despite those things, the planet is more green than it was some years
Despite
ago.
those things, yeah, just don't even talk about the facts. You
Again,
were saying that the planet is
again,
even more
the
green than
amount
it's
of
ever been, and I was saying that millions of acres are being deforested every fucking year from one of the planet's biggest CO2
okay, well,
resource.
apparently we're able to offset that by hundreds of millions of plants growing every year to offset that destruction.
No, simply not.
Yeah,
They're releasing CO2 rather than taking it in. Yeah, which is positively contributing to the greenhouse effect,
by
which
creating
is
more
bad.
plants. We have more plants, more plants. The planet is greener than we did before. The plant is going
Yeah,
more green,
but
more.
big plant better than small plant.
Sorry?
Big plant better than small plant. And
Okay, but
we are
we still have more plants.
Yeah, but we are taking many big plants away for some small plants.
Okay, how about this? How about we make sure that there's more uh, CO2 sucking algae in the oceans? And to do that, we
We're
just need
just
to
dying because the ocean
no, no,
is
it's not die. We just
getting
need to
more
fertilize.
acidic
We
because of
just
the CO2 in the ocean.
it's
That's
just a
basic chemistry.
it's just a tiny bit more acidic. It's not significantly more acidic.
It's just a tiny bit more acidic. Coral reefs are the Great Barrier Reef
Some of
is
those
basically
coral
not
reefs are
existent
coming back
anymore.
and revitalizing themselves. I'm saying to suck out CO2 from the atmosphere. Yeah, we fertilize the oceans to have more green algae. You know those green algae they use in factories to like suck in CO2, like in these tubes that they have. Never mind. So we use those kinds of algae. We fertilize them with iron dust, or minerals that help them grow, and we suck out millions or billions of CO2 from the environment. Because ocean, there's a lot of ocean.
Yeah, go on.
No, just read about it. Like I think called pasteurizing the oceans or something. Like you could sprinkle iron dust, or well, I'm not sure. I think it's iron, some sort of mineral that helps them grow, and the algae will grow. There'll be more algae, more fish, more. The whole ecosystem will grow, will develop, and it will suck out more CO2 from the environment and keep it in the algae.
Okay, and how much algae do you think we need to produce until it makes a visible difference?
Well, I'd like to. I think it's scalable. Last I checked on it, I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I am, and
But
it's not
it's.
scalable.
I just told you about it. How do you know if it's not? Look, man,
Well,
and
because
look.
by the
I'll tell you
amount
what. I'll tell you
of
what. I'll tell you. When you grow older, yeah, you'll realize after hearing these panicky things for like a million times, like all the way from school when you're like painting stuff, like when you're 6 years old, the teacher's telling you to what about climate change? At some point
Yeah, then
in your 30s,
I'll be in
at
company
some
of
point, let me
some
just tell
right
you.
retarded
Let me just tell you. At some point in your
greedy
30s,
bastards,
at some point in your
capitalists, I
30s,
must
you'll realize
racist.
that it's not as bad as what you've been told, right? And then you'll move on from this phase. But until then, I'm gonna head out. It was nice chatting with
Well,
you. I hope that things will work out for you.
yeah, they're not gonna do that, but
Of course not.
I don't
It will
think
all
that
be
you
terrible.
can
You're right.
grasp.
We're all gonna die. I know.
Yeah, I hope you'll die first then, so yeah.
Wow.